We've got a variety of topics on this morning, and of course we'll be visiting Tobago as well. We're also going to be talking about the Bocas Lit Festival. Also the Tunapuna Chamber of Commerce is going to be talking about the economy, and also the Prime Minister's Best Village competition that is soon to start. But one of the topics that's really all over Trinidad and Tobago these days, and you may have been even one of those people, one of those citizens who would have gotten basically the details of what you need to submit to the government, all the information that you need, all the documents that you need. It is coming via email. Someone even made a comment that they wish that they could get their tax returns and various things as quickly as they got those in the mail. But they are coming, and you have up until May 22nd to basically fill out those forms and file them back with the government. So we are talking property tax. May 22nd. May starts next week, so it's just under a month away in which you have to fill out that form and submit it. We just spoke with Prakash Ramadar, the MP for St. Augustine and former political leader of the Congress of the People, and we are now going to be speaking with Vasant, who is also a former Minister of Trade and Industry. So let me welcome you. Good morning to you, sir. So glad to have you with this morning.
My pleasure to be on.
Property tax. Now, Minister Imber, Minister of Finance, he said that the property tax is not new. We know it's not new, and for close to 200 years, he says, since 1818, a form of the property taxation has been on the country's law books. So basically, what is all the fuss about? And it's really not that much money that we're talking about.
May not be much money to you, Ria, but to a lot of people it is. I have several problems with the introduction of property tax at this point in time. I think that inherently most people understand very clearly that they must pay some level of taxation on earned income. But I think it's the timing of the tax that it's creating a lot of problem for people. So the issues I have are as follows. First of all, in most countries, as you may know, and I think Prakash may have mentioned it before I came on, property tax is payable, and it's community-based essentially, so that whatever property tax you pay, it goes towards the improvement of your own community. So in terms of better schools, better roads, better lighting, and so on. In this particular instance, whatever monies are gathered from property tax is going to go directly into the consolidated fund. Yes. So it's going to be dissipated, and it's going to be used for all kinds of things other than services to the community. So it is highly unlikely that anyone's going to see any improvement in the state of the services or goods that they receive in their community. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the timing of the property tax is at a time when citizens believe that they've been taxed into submission. We've had a variety of taxes imposed on citizens in the last 18 months. We've had additional VAT, we've had online taxes, we've had increases in gas prices, we've had an increase in the Green Fund, an increase in the unemployment levy. All of these have added to the burdens that citizens have to carry on their backs in terms of the additional cost of living. So any further taxation at this point in time, whether it's property tax, income tax, corporation tax, I believe to be oppressive. Okay. Now, I know that you mentioned it may not be, I guess you're reading from Imbert's response, that it's not a lot of money. But I can guarantee you that anyone who is on a fixed income, a pensioner, for example, or even ordinary working folks who are on an income that is not going to be moving anytime shortly, and they have specific needs and requirements on a monthly basis for which they set aside a certain amount of money, it's going to be difficult to find an additional $2,000 a year or $1,500 a year. What are they going to have to make sacrifices on are the issues? No. It's 3% on residences. Okay, so owners of properties are going to have to pay 3% of the annual rateable value. It's very likely that if you're a renter and not an owner, that is going to be passed on to you. The landlord is not going to absorb it. All right? That's
something I want to discuss. How is that going to exactly happen? Isn't the landlord the one who's supposed to pay that?
Absolutely, but the landlord isn't going to shoulder the burden of the additional property tax, so it'll be passed on to the renter.
There's something I want to ask about that as well, because the question was raised in the event that the landlord is not in the country, cannot be found. Can that be asked of the renter to pay that property tax and then
deducted from the rent?
Yes,
absolutely. The renter can be charged and then it's deducted from the rent. The third issue with regard to this matter is it's charged, property tax is going to be charged on manufacturers, plant and equipment and buildings. Okay, so there's going to be property tax. If I'm manufacturing something, it's going to be charged on the product I manufacture. So if I manufacture in Trinidad this mug, I'm going to have to pay property tax as a manufacturer. When I sell this mug to a wholesaler, who is the distributor, that wholesaler or distributor has to pay property tax also because he has a warehouse. Okay? When the wholesaler takes that mug and sells it to the mini mart or to the pharmacy or to the small grocery, there's property tax on that grocery or on that pharmacy also. So by the time it reaches you, the consumer, you've paid 3 sets of property tax on this particular mug. Now, those taxes are not, those costs are not going to be absorbed by people in that chain. They're going to pass it on. Ultimately, it's the consumer who is going to bear the burden of that property tax. When the consumer does that and has to pay more for this mug and more for other items, the consumer may ultimately cut back on his or her expenditure because you've got less to spend. When that happens, they've got less to spend in the grocery or in the pharmacy, which then is under strain. The businesses become under strain, and of course then that means that they send people home. So it's a whole downward spiral, economic spiral, at a time when we actually need economic activity and not the reverse. So that's the first issue I have, the economic issues related to the short-term thinking of this government in introducing this property tax. The second issue I have is the classification, how it's classified and how the valuations are done. So first of all, we have questions on the qualifications of the people who are going to be sent out to value homes. The second issue is we have issues with the security aspects of that. Are you going to just allow someone to just walk into your home, walk around? People are going to, we know what's happening today in today's world. Are you going to be comfortable allowing just people to just walk in, look around, take photographs, do all kinds of different things? You don't know what kind of security risks there are involved. But with regard to the actual valuation methodologies, there are 3. One is a classification. And it's specified that it's going to be valued based on either a standard house, modern house, or an executive. Who determines whether it's standard, modern, or executive? Who determines whether it's an executive modern, right? Or a standard modern or a modern executive? Who determines that? Or it's only executive or it's only standard? The valuation officer. Okay? You then have an issue of location. It's going to be valued on the basis of location. Now, we all know that there are certain areas in the country, and I'll give you 2. One is Arangwes and one is Woodbrook, where over the years, because of the commercialization of those areas, land values have gone up significantly. But there are people who have been living there for 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 years. Okay? They've lived in the same area, in the same house. How are they going to be treated? Because clearly, if you have one Alexandra as an example in Woodbrook, and you have several older houses right next door, the value of the land will be based on what's in the surrounding areas. So how are you going to treat with those people and those properties that have exploded in price, and the same has happened in Arangwes because of the commercialization of Arangwes?
This was actually a question that I did ask last week. If you are living in an area that you have a residence in an area that has now become commercialized, what's going to happen to the value of your property? And there's still homes in that area.
That's correct. So the other issue is it's going to be based on condition and quality. So you and I may have started off with the very same house 15 years ago next door to each other, but I've spent all of my money traveling and doing all kinds of things that I enjoy. I've not maintained my house at all. I've not done any work to my house. The grass has grown up to knee high. You, on the other hand, have saved all of your money. You've put it into your house. You've invested into your home. You've air conditioned it. You've extended it. You've kept it well. Your house, from an annual rental value perspective, is worth more than mine. And so therefore you're going to be charged more property tax than I will. Now that's from my perspective, and I think for the majority of people, that is actually penalizing you for having invested in your home. So that's the third issue. The fourth major issue we have is that no one is exempt.
Yes.
Absolutely no one is exempt.
So pensioners.
So if you're a pensioner, if you're infirmed, if you have a disability, if you just can't afford it, you are not exempt. What they will grant you upon approval is a deferral, okay? But deferral until death. So immediately as you die, the property tax becomes payable. It's cumulative, it doesn't go away. Immediately as you die, it becomes a call on your estate. So whoever survives you and whoever is the people who benefit from your property, they're the ones who are going to be called upon to pay the property tax upon the person's death. And the last issue I think that we want to raise is the number of supporting documentations that is required. Deed, survey plan, photograph, sketch of the building, site plan, building plan, WASAP bill, T&Tech bill, town and country planning, completion certificate, rental agreement. Who in today's world has all of those documents?
But the government did say that you don't have to supply all of them.
No, but they will. The point we're making is that you need to be clear on what you will accept and what you won't, because what you don't want is this ambiguity of what you can and what you can't do, and then these officers descend in a swarm upon your house, threatening all kinds of legal repercussions. And the very last and probably the most troubling one for me is the fact that if after 6 months you haven't paid the tax, it incurs 10% interest, and then 15% after the 6-month period. After 1 year, the Board of Inland Revenue has the authority upon obtaining a warrant to break in. These are the words: to break into your home and seize assets and, that they can then sell to be able to recover the taxes. And if after 5 years the tax still remains unpaid, they can actually get a warrant to actually forfeit your home, your land, or whatever it is the taxes are owed on. They can forfeit it, and it forfeits to the state. So they actually seize your land and your property, and it goes to the state after 5 years. And that's a very troubling thing, because we know in Trinidad and Tobago all kinds of bobble can play off.
Yeah. There are many issues that I want to clarify, but one specifically related to pensioners, because I did ask this of Mr. Ramadar as well. When you say that the elderly who own the pensioners who own a property can be deferred, but the estate on their death will have to pay that. Is it that they will start paying the property tax on their death, or is it that they have to pay the property tax that was deferred by
all
the
of it, all that was deferred? Yeah, absolutely. This is what I'm saying. This is a cumulative fact. So if you're unable, if as a pensioner you are, and of course to be able to prove that you can't pay it, you've got to provide all kinds of documentation as well. Public assistance grant, that you're receiving public assistance, that you're receiving a senior citizens grant, you're receiving state pension. All of these things you have to prove. Okay? Once you've proven that and they've given you a deferral, it is deferred until death, but it accumulates on the estate of the deceased person.
How does this apply to HDC housing, though?
If you own an HDC house, you are liable for the tax. If it is that you are renting an HDC house, then you're not. Then the HDC will pay the taxes for you, because they are the owner of the property. So
if you're HDC renter, your
HDC pays the tax.
So it's basically coming back out of the government to pay the government.
The HDC essentially in that case is the landlord.
Yeah.
If they're renting, so the landlord and the owner of the property is essentially the one who is responsible. If you bought the house, even though you may have a mortgage on it, because people have asked me, well, you know, if I have a 30-year mortgage, I really don't own the house. Well, you do.
Yeah.
You just have a mortgage on the house, and you're responsible.
Okay, so there are all these issues, and many people are concerned. You've highlighted all the issues that we're reading all over social media and people have been talking about and are concerned about with this property tax. Do you have any solutions?
My solution is that the government should repeal the act and withdraw the tax immediately. I do not believe that in its current form, or in fact, I do not believe that at this point in time the population can afford to pay any further taxes. I think it's an abuse of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. I believe that the government has fallen short in terms of what they're supposed to be doing in terms of raising revenues. Since the government has come into office 18 or 19 months ago, they've not put in place a single revenue raising measure. Not a single one, apart from borrowing money. They borrowed $12.3 billion, additional in the last 18 months. They've raided the Heritage and Stabilization Fund of $4 billion. Okay? They're taxing. They've put in place VAT, online tax, all the other taxes I mentioned at the outset, plus now this property tax. They've sold off assets. So they've actually not raised any. They've not put in place any new measures to raise revenue. Their modus operandi seems to continue to tax the population and borrow more money. And we see where that's leading us, because Standard & Poor's, a rating agency, only 2 days ago downgraded Trinidad and Tobago for the amount of borrowings that we have and our possible inability to be able to repay it. Okay, and I want to just alert the population that every dollar we borrow, the more money we borrow, the less money we have to spend on healthcare, less money we have to spend on education, less money we have to spend on creating opportunities for jobs, and so on and so forth. And, you know, before we could put a bottle of medicine in a hospital, or buy a bed for the hospital, or pay a school lunch for a child, or any of these things, or fix a burst water mains, we've got to pay these loans first. So we've got to be very careful, and I think the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago need to be very clear on this particular matter, that enough is enough.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Barath, for coming in and letting us elaborate some more on what some of the concerns are with respect to paying of this property tax. The government did say, though, first payment is not until next year. So maybe, I don't know, people have an opportunity to accumulate some sort of funds in order to pay it. We have to wait and see, especially in the economic times that we are in right now in Trinidad and Tobago. But thank you.
My pleasure.
Former Minister of Trade and Industry here on Good Morning Trinidad and Tobago. The property tax, it continues, and the discussion will be continuing. This is Good Morning Trinidad and Tobago. We will